Well, Jim, let's get to something that a lot of the listeners have been sending in. Apparently, Jon Moxley on, I guess this would be either his Instagram or his Twitter, I'm not sure, is advertising a seminar, the Jon Moxley Seminar, for $60, Friday, June 16th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., Dayton, Ohio. Only 20 spots available, and you must have 8 months wrestling. The word they were trying for was experience, but it says experience. And you could email the fine people here that was the end of your free plug, so we're not going to give you your email address.
No, hold on here a second, though, because you're looking at, I've seen it, and I saw experience the plumber.
Yeah. I speak my own way.
I don't have it in front of me. You're looking at it. This is obviously, he's not just doing this in his backyard. Is it at some location that has contracted with him, some alleged wrestling school that has contracted with him to appear at their location and do this seminar? Or is he just doing it at his house? Is there a location listed that would indicate that it's a business or?
No, there's an email address, and then very tiny at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a logo that appears to say Pile Driver and very, very tiny Wrestling Academy as I look closely. So the Pile Driver Wrestling Academy.
Oh, the world famous. Turned out so many of those incomparable greats of years ago. Okay, so
how far is Dayton from Cincinnati? Because that's where he lives, right? 45.
Well, depends on what part of Cincinnati, but 45 minutes or whatever it is. It's right up the interstate. Well, with the traffic up there these days, plus if people know that Moxley's coming to Dayton, there may be a flood of traffic heading in the other direction.
Because of the sea of blood coming down the highway.
Actually, I was thinking the sea of mud, but nevertheless.
That works.
So let's dissect this, because it's going to be so badass. Just say it.
Dope and badass.
Right? Okay, either one. There'll be dope there. There'll be as a matter of fact, the stork that delivered Moxley was later arrested for carrying dope.
Just remember, I'm the main dope.
But let's dissect this just for a second.
Like a frog.
So I'm trying to get my grip around. I'm getting my grip around this head or head around this grip. I'm trying to wrap my head around or get a grip on the idea of this individual training or teaching or mentoring young minds in the wrestling business. And that's bad enough without you giving me that nightmarish voice. But first of all, it's $60 each, right? That's what it says on the flyer there.
That's right.
And it's limited to 20 spots.
That's right.
That's $1,200. And that's before that the guy that's obviously running the Pile Driver Institute of Technology, or PIT for short, takes his cut for even the use of his building, for turning the lights on, flipping the switch on the air conditioning if they have that amenity. And then he's going to pay Moxley. What's Moxley doing this for? $750? I'll just run up the road to Dayton and teach some fucking jabronis all that I know about wrestling. It'll only take about 15 minutes.
If it's a local school and he knows the people there, he may just be doing it for free. I'll go up the road. I'll hang out at your school for the day. You guys need the money.
All right. Then in that case, it's a charity appearance.
In a sense.
So let's examine what in the French fried titty fuck that Plumber Moxley needs to be teaching to young, impressionable wrestling minds. So let's say, for example, is he going to give them, I don't know, tips on diet, strength, conditioning, workout, in the gym, his training program? That probably wouldn't.
We go right to action. Step 1, lock up. Step 2, blood.
So, okay, let's go to step 2. If he can't teach them anything about their training or their health or their conditioning or gym work, well, it's noted that Moxley sells like Ricky Morton. You just touch him and he flies. Why, that exploding super kick, he was in the hospital for 3 weeks. No, he's not really noted for his selling.
He sells nothing.
He sells nothing. Okay. Well, let's back up here for a sec. His incredibly firm and professional in-ring work where everything is crisp and looks incredibly brutal and violent and real. You can't see any daylight through any of his, like those elbows or maybe the punch or the forearm. Well, all right, so we've scratched offense and defense. Now, you know, he can talk. He can talk. Yeah. He can cut a good promo. Is he doing promo class? Maybe that's where he ought to be. Maybe he could teach psychology of wrestling, because, you know, all of his matches make so much sense from beginning to end. And the psychology is so intricate that you're on a roller coaster ride of emotions. He makes you wait for the big spots until the end. No.
We're going to watch tapes. Sit down. Have you all seen Rocky III?
Blading. Here we go.
Oh.
Because none of the guys in the business know how to blade anymore. So he can teach you. But wait a minute. You don't need to pay $60 and go to the Pile Driver Institute of Technology. You can stay in your own home and watch Wednesday nights on television, because he does it right in front of everybody in close-ups on camera. So you can learn that at home. That's one of those correspondence courses. Learn how to cut your head with a razor blade in the privacy of your own home.
Johnny Valentine had a correspondence course.
Yeah, but he was crippled first, so he kind of got a pass. Okay. But then, I'm just trying to, you know, the old joke, guys experienced veterans would come up to young rookies that their shit looked like shit, and they'd say, boy, I can learn to work watching you wrestle. And of course, that meant that your shit was so see-through and obvious that everybody could learn to work by watching you wrestle. And actually, I think that's probably what the plumber has been teaching everybody with his television matches, is how to learn to work, because you can see through everything he fucking does. And as the old saying, I stole it from Lawler about Lance Russell and used it on David Crockett. David's not here today because he's at the Columbia School of Broadcasting. They're using him as a bad example. So I think in that case, they ought to advertise $100, limited to 1,000 spots. We're going to hold up Plumber Moxley as a bad example. You're going to watch him for 3 hours and take notes and do absolutely nothing that he does. And that's how you learn.
I don't know too much about these seminars in general. The must-have 8 months wrestling experience, or experience, as most of us commonly call it, is that a common thing where you don't want just people who just started wrestling school or anything?
Well, but again, what is 8 months experience? 8 months experience training in some guy's little wrestling school or backyard when he doesn't know shit from apple butter and couldn't say suey if the hogs had him. What's that worth to you? We had guys that would come to the OVW seminars that said, well, we've been training at our particular, and this is not every school. We had some good ones. And obviously the vast majority of guys had trained in some aspect, although Elijah Burke came to it with nothing, no experience whatsoever, no training or anything. And we snapped him right up. But it depends on 8 months experience at what? As I was going to say, the OVW guys would say, we've been training at such and such place for a year and a half, or what, we learned more in this weekend than we've learned in a year and a half. Because we might have had Rip Rogers or Tom Pritchard or myself, Danny Davis, or whoever was coaching or training or guesting, stopping by at the time, running these seminars. Kevin Kelly was involved in a lot of them. And so you would do interviews, or you would do matches, or you would do drills, depending on who was in charge of that particular segment of the the seminar, and we would see what everybody had, right? And where everybody was, and then we would determine whether we invited them back to continue in the program. They couldn't just say, I'd like to come here. It doesn't matter. We need to want you. So an 8 months experience in wrestling, is that after you got out of wrestling school and you've been wrestling for 8 months? On the indies, that could be 8 matches, 2 matches, 104 matches against people that don't know how to tie their boots. So what are you going to fucking learn? It depends. So that's probably Moxley saying, look, to this guy, look, I'll come up there, but goddamn, at least, make it worth my while where nobody's going to just be the shits or just be asking for my autograph. They've got to have some kind of background. Who knows?
Do you think Moxley walks through the front door? Or does he find a back way to come in through like a side door or something?
Well, it depends on how good the PA system is in the school where they can hear his Wild Thing playing. But anyway,
the fact that so many listeners have sent this in tells you what the story is. People find this ridiculous.
Well, yeah, it writes itself. Because here's a guy who's had the advantage of every... He trained at some point with Les Thatcher. Didn't listen, obviously.
Less is more.
Boy, in this case, he sure is. But this is a guy who's had every opportunity. He worked in the WWE. He's worked with some of the biggest names in the business. He has had opportunities at training programs. Yes, he's somehow lasted this long in the major companies with... I think that's because the WWE could control him, which is why he wanted to get out of there, because he wants to do the garbage wrestling. That's his motivation. And they could get something out of him. But what they've got now in AEW, where nobody's controlling him, is an embarrassment. Because he's a fucking parody of the goddamn badass that he thinks he is in his head, even though, as we've mentioned many times and enumerated, he looks like shit, he works like shit, and the shit don't make any sense. And all he wants to do is roll around in fucking barbed wire. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Mr. Moxley?
That'll be $60.
I hope he sticks his finger up their ass while they're there for the $60 and checks them for hemorrhoids just so they get something out of it.
That's another 15.
Anyway, we wish him well up there at the Power Slam Institute of Technology or whatever it was. As soon as he hits the pit, why, the blood will be flying.
Well, Jim, you may be a young wrestling student. You may be someone with 8 months or so of experience, and you go there thinking, a former world champion, I'll get some great advice. You may come out of that disappointed. You want your $60 back. You may want to sue.
Well, that's right. And let me ask you this, Brian, because you're an educated man, an individual that's a graduate of a major university. Can 20 people... Well, they wouldn't have known unless you had said that.
Well, we got to be honest.
Can 20 people join into a class action suit?
Yes, I think a class action suit could be just more than one.
Well, there you go. Then in that case, I know exactly who all 20 of the attendees at the seminar of Plumber Moxley need to call.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been victimized by one of these shade tree wrestling academies who have, under false pretenses, drawn you in and taken your money to be taught how to wrestle by an incompetent, illiterate, inimitable moron like the plumber or any one of his ilk, then, ladies and gentlemen, I suggest you all band together to get that $60 a piece back. And all 20 of you would make $1,200, and for $1,200, Stephen P. New will tie a man to the back of his pickup truck and ride him down the road, dragging him every step of the way if he don't want to come to the bargaining table with a settlement for old Stephen P. New's clients, and you can get in on that kind of aggravation and animosity too. Stephen P. New is a man who will chew through the opposition in a legal court of law like they're wearing milk bone underwear and he's a pit bull on a diet. And Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. He could get your $60 back for that seminar. As a matter of fact, he'll get the extra $15 back for you if you underwent the hemorrhoid examination. And if you had anything else placed or inserted into your various bodily cavities, then he'll probably run up a tab on those too. So if you're gonna get inserted, then have the whole work shoved up there because he'll get you paid for every single bit of it.
I don't know what you're saying, but none of that.
I'm telling you, he'll get you paid for everything. He'll enumerate all the different ways that you've been violated, perpetrated, and orchestrated against, and he will have a tally a mile long. I'm just telling you, you'll sound like a slot machine by the time Stephen P. New finishes making the people that have illegally and improperly jacked you around come to the table and spread their money and trading stamps and used cars and anything else they've got to try to get you to go away. Because that's the one thing that every time Stephen P. New pays somebody a visit, they can't wait for him and his clients to go away. And they pay big bucks for that to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Whether you've been wrongfully terminated or penetrated or anything else that's been done to you that should not be done legally, morally, and ethically, Stephen P. New is the man you need to call for revenge.